Hey everybody, what's going on? Helmlight here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today, if you couldn't tell from the thumbnail, I wanted to talk a little bit about Aphelios. Now, it's been a while. I know I haven't thrown my hat into the ring of the nerf Aphelios train, and to be honest, I kind of didn't want to start, but since he does have nerfs lined up on the PvE with the express goal of giving Riot a slightly more diverse champion pool for the Summer Split and for Worlds, I figured like it was time to finally talk about everyone's favorite Moon Boy and try to discuss how this character needs to be nerfed. Now, if you have not had the opportunity to play against Aphelios or see Aphelios, he has been very, very good. This champion brings a lot of advantages to the table, and Riot, quite frankly, have not nerfed him very hard at all. A lot of the nerfs Riot have directed at Aphelios over his so far very limited stint in the game have been very small nerfs. Things like he can only get so many chakram stacks, he can't necessarily get his chakrams to continue to stack on jungle monsters. Very, very small things that they've nerfed about Aphelios without actually nerfing him in a significant way. And because of this, he has essentially been unnerfed for the entire time he's been in. They've all been very small nerfs. They've all been very insignificant nerfs. And I think that that's one of the reasons why he's still a very pick-ban champion in professional play, is because none of the nerfs he's received have stopped his power level in any meaningful way. And now, there is a reason for this, and I believe part of the problem is because Aphelios is a bit of a utility character. He has so many strengths and he has so many abilities to do things that it doesn't matter if he gets nerfed in a specific interaction that he was too strong with. So a while back they nerfed his ability to rapidly gain chakram based on his Calibrum turrets attacking you and marking you, and then he could right click you to do the damage, get more chakrams, and because there was no cooldown on that, if you got auto attacked in multiple succession, he could very rapidly drain your health while building up a ton of chakrams. That was a degenerate mechanic. That was a degenerate combo that got nerfed. But just because that got nerfed doesn't mean that Aphelios suddenly fell off the face of the earth and was weak again. People just found another good combo, or they just kept using Calibrum Crescendum, because that's a really good combo. It gives you a ton of AoE damage. It gives you a ton of zoning potential in teamfights. That sort of a thing. Aphelios, the fact that he brings utility and the fact that he has so many combinations means to me that until Riot have nerfed almost every combination of abilities that Aphelios can bring to the table, or at least the most degenerate combos, he will never be truly balanced. And even then, almost every part of his kit will likely be nerfed, and at that point, Aphelios is going to just feel awful to play. He'll essentially have been Olaf because everything he does will have been nerfed at that point, so he'll be naturally feel weak because unless you're a professional player, he's going to feel bad. Now, I do think that Riot can nip this one in the bud right away and say we only want to balance Aphelios out for professional play, the same way that they did Ryze, Azir, and Callista. Those three were the big ones that they essentially said, we're only going to try and balance them for pro play. We cannot do it for pubs because they have problems every single time they show up in pro play. So I think that would be a fine thing to do, but I do think that Aphelios does need to have some meaningful changes, and more meaningful than just the nerfs they have lined up for him on the PvE right now, which will be reducing the turret wind-up time, increasing the turret wind-up time on his Crescendum ability, so there's slightly more time for you to get out of the turret's range. But that's not really even the problem with the turret, and the fact that they're not pulling the trigger on more changes tells me that they think this is enough. It's not going to be, I can tell you that right now. He will be back in the patch notes, and it's partially because he's a very unique champion, but I do think the biggest problem is Aphelios doesn't have enough weaknesses. Aphelios doesn't have to think very hard about which weapons he wants to use or needs to use for a particular situation. He just can kind of use what he wants, and he'll pretty much still do excellently in his fights because he doesn't have to think about it. It doesn't matter to him, and he has no actual weaknesses. Part of the problem, of course, is that Aphelios, it's way too easy for him to have the right weapon for the job. He's able to cycle through his ammunition so fast and hold on to specific weapons for long enough that he can very easily guarantee that he has whatever combo it is he wants. So that's part of the problem, and there are ways you could change that. I would consider, giving Aphelios a longer more ammunition per gun. So now this would have the adverse side effect of buffing his degenerate combos when he does get them, but it also means that it takes him longer to get to them, so his ability to have those degenerate combos is ultimately reduced, especially if in team fights he's swapping to his offhand weapon to try and do something with it. Well, that means he's using, let's say, Calibrum ammunition in a team fight, which he might have wanted to have saved for when he got Crescendum, but now that he's got Crescendum, he's halfway done with Calibrum, and there's a more limited amount of time he can keep both of them because he has to keep last hitting. That sort of a thing. I do think increasing ammunition might be a decent way to nerf him. But I think the biggest thing I would want to see Riot nerf about Aphelios is to give each of his guns a weakness. Right now, all of his guns are upside. They are pure strength. Each one just makes him stronger in a different way. And now this is problematic because on one hand, it would feel bad for Aphelios to say, oh, well, I have this weapon out now and I can't do this particularly well, and if I hadn't been using it, I would feel better about this particular situation. But on the other hand, having a weakness means that Aphelios needs to think more smart about which weapon he wants. He has to consider, can I afford to take this DPS drop in exchange for utility? Can I afford to take this damage drop in exchange for utility? Because I need the utility more right now. He's always meant to be the Galaxy Brain champion, so I don't think it makes any sense to say, well, players would have to try and remember which of his weapons are weaker and which of his weapons are stronger and what changes they actually make to his kit. I think that's a bogus complaint, a bogus argument, because, let's be real, Aphelios will just kind of... He's supposed to be the big brain champion. You should be keeping track of those things. He should be the kind of champion where if you've mastered him, you're able to keep track of all of these different advantages and disadvantages with him at the same time, instead of just kind of having Riot hold your hand and say, well, it's all upside. You don't have to worry about it literally in the slightest. So, to talk about these sort of proposed changes, at the very least for me, I would want each gun to bring a strength and a weakness, like I said before. Calibrum, for example, is his poke weapon. It gives him increased range. It makes it so that he can get auto attacks in cheekily because he's got that boosted range. It makes it so that he's able to kind of wear you down at a distance while keeping himself safe. I would love to see that gun have reduced attack speed. The point being that this is about poking. This isn't about training somebody down from a long range. Another example, Severum is a sustain weapon. It's supposed to let him heal himself back to full in between fights or otherwise keep himself safe while he's fighting somebody. I would love to see Severum have a reduced range on it. So that way Aphelios has to play significantly more risky in order to benefit from the sustain. In team fights, which is generally where Riot wants sustain to be the biggest deal, it doesn't matter because pretty much enemies will be in your face in general, so you'll have to be able to hit them. They'll be close to you so you can benefit from the sustain. But it also means that Aphelios' ability to just kind of AFK heal himself off of a wave is significantly reduced, and especially considering his early laning phases where he starts with Calibrum and Severum, Aphelios has to make the choice between those two. Does he use Calibrum? He can use Calibrum to last hit safely from a distance, but if he swaps to Severum to sustain, he's going to be at a shorter range, so there's more tension there than right now where you just kind of use Calibrum to bully the enemy, and you use Severum to heal off any damage you might take in exchange. This new mode would make it so that there's significantly more drawbacks to it. And now, for those of you saying, well, that wouldn't make any sense, you'd have to have a disadvantages for every weapon he's got. Yeah, you would, and I think that there are plenty of ways Riot could give Aphelios' guns different nerfs, and in fact, he already has a weapon that has a disadvantage in the form of Crescendum. Crescendum gives him you can attack as much as you want, but you have to wait for the travel time. So Crescendum is actually worse when you're at long range trying to either poke somebody down or when you're trying to keep a champion at range or when they're keeping you at a range. Crescendum is just straight a DPS drop in those situations because if he can't get close enough to have the increased attack speed, more or less, from being close to his enemies, he's getting a DPS drop. That means Crescendum is best when you're close to somebody. That's an advantage and a disadvantage on that weapon. Imagine that. Now, so I would like to see all the rest of his weapons have that, so Aphelios has to think more carefully about what he actually plans on using. I also would love to see some changes to the turrets, as I think that's one of the biggest problems. That's been the most exploitable combination he's got. And in fact, if you could find a way to adequately nerf turrets, I would wait and see how that works before checking and seeing, okay, is Aphelios truly broken after that? Do each of his weapons need advantages, disadvantages, that sort of a thing? I would wait and see if that is needed if you nerf his turrets in a significant way. I would personally like to see them move to Severum. There might be an issue with animations and modeling on that, and there may be other reasons for Riot to not do that particular combo, but I would like to see that nerf in particular because it reinforces then that Crescendum is your close range maximum DPS tool. The whole point of it is get in close and hit the dude as much as possible, and having Crescendum auto attack rapidly, generate a bunch of extra chakrams off of that, use your alternate weapon on top of that. It makes sense to me. Now, Severum would not make a lot of sense with the turret ability. You might have to find another ability for it in general, but I think right now the turret is the biggest problem I have with Aphelios and that I have with his current playstyle. So I would love to see that either nerfed in a more significant manner than Riot are doing right now, or just straight removed from his kit and then kind of reevaluate where Aphelios is at. And make no mistake, I like Aphelios. I think he's an interesting character. I think that he is an interesting design. And I think he is the kind of champion that can show a way forward for League of Legends design and League of Legends characters. The fact that he is so unique does make him an interesting pick, regardless of what your opinions are on his balance. So I don't want to see him get Olaf'd. I don't want to see players more or less say, yeah, I never want to see this character again in my life, nerf him down to the ground, because I do think there are some interesting things he brings to the table. But I do think right now that Riot has been too cautious with his nerfs, and I would love to see them really take a bat to this guy and say, let's get you sorted. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think of Aphelios down in the comment section below. If you have any creative ideas for how we could maybe get this champion into a better state, at least a better state to feel like you're playing against, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, especially if you play Aphelios. Definitely you guys have a better knowledge of that character than I do, so let me know what your guys' thoughts are down in the comment section below. Would love to hear it. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and leave a like, and if you really enjoyed today's video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.